Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Sanders on Psalms. Today we're going to be reading in Psalms 134. This will be part 5 with our dear friend Gavriel Aryeh Sanders. Aryeh here, Aryeh.
Hear ye, Aryeh. Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Very
Yes,
good.
indeed.
Okay, excellent. You know, your wit, charm, and wisdom never cease to amaze me.
Oh, you're being way too kind. You're being.
I know. I need to get out more often. So we all could get out more often. So what can I tell you?
Indeed.
Well,
So,
thank you so much.
yeah, a lot of positive feedback, like we were discussing earlier on the show. It's quite the best way I could describe it is like a really nice morsel of more like a loaf of bread, freshly baked bread. So it's like you could sit and eat the whole entire loaf. I love it. That's what it reminds me of. Good stuff.
We have that experience on Friday nights and and Shabbat. So
that's beautiful.
Excellent. There's nothing like it. So
nice.
At any rate, I want to welcome everyone. And right off the bat, I want to remind everyone as well to buy William a cup of coffee at least once a month, maybe twice. You can do that through helping us keep the channel going through the Patreon and go to the Facebook page. There's instructions there. It's just important that this is a community effort. It's a community platform. And so all of us as content contributors are that. We're contributing content, but there are expenses as far as keeping the operation going, the equipment and the streaming and all the other technical things that William has to take care of. So
thank you. Anyway, and you will find links below in the video description also. Anyway.
Down there somewhere. Okay.
Down there.
Go look.
Thank you.
All right, so thanks for, and he'll be well caffeinated from your contributions.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I appreciate them.
Thank you.
All right, so today we're going to explore Psalm 134, and someone could say, well, gee, why are you starting out with Psalm 134? Isn't that the end of the Psalms of Ascent? And I will say to you, you're absolutely on point. It is the 15th of the 15 Psalms of Ascent. And we're going to work backwards a bit in the Psalms of Ascent. Why are we doing those? Because first of all, the Psalms of Ascent are very short. Secondly, there's a lot of repetitive language. So as we go from one chapter to another chapter, we'll find some common language. So it'll be more familiar to our viewers as we go along. So the cumulative effect of learning, I think, will be more retentive for you. And that's important. And the brevity takes, kind of a load off. If we took, I don't know, Psalm 119, Kuf Yotet, that's just massive. It's 8 times 22. You get 22 stanzas, 8 verses each. Or some others, there are some shorter ones that are very powerful, like the Psalm of Moses, Psalm 91. But there are some very, very long ones. I think 78. In that area, there's some pretty extensive ones often, and there is some unique vocabulary that's used throughout the book of Psalms as well. We've mentioned this, I think, once on the programming so far. There's a phenomenon called hapax legamina. Now, it sounds like something you want to get a vaccination for, right? I got vaccinated against hapax legamina. Did you get yours? Okay.
That's funny.
Are you hapax legamina phobic? What's the matter with you? And hapax legamina is a Greek word which means one, basically spoken once, or it's mentioned once. So there are about, I think, around 8,000 words, perhaps, I think, that exist just one time in the Hebrew Bible. That's not a small number. And we bump into a fair number of them in the Psalms, some in Proverbs, definitely scattered throughout the prophets. We'll find a number of them. Also, the book of Leviticus, you'll find a number of them. But we're not focusing on those so much. We'll find a lot of common language in this. So I kind of want to get right to it here as we begin today. Let me get the screen up here, make sure the sound is on. Okay, because what we're going to do is, in giving you kind of the order of approach, is first of all, we'll actually take a listen to the chanting of it and read it. We have the chanting of Rabbi Dan Be'eri, which is available at archive.net. If you want a link to that, just let me know. I'm going to go back to this issue. What are the Psalms of Ascent? We'll analyze the Psalm today. And we are working on trying to understand the structure, the nature of the Hebrew verb, And today we'll talk a little bit about what is a number 3 verb, known as PL or intensive. Those are just technical terms. Really, when we talk about Hebrew verbs, we're talking about 7 types of action and 2 major categories of verb, strong ones and weak ones. So that's one of the first things to get anchored in your mind. There are 7 categories of action. Each of those categories has a certain music to it. And if the verb is a strong verb, those are pretty consistent in terms of their music, their intonality. And the weak ones also have predictable patterns. And so my favorite, I guess, phrase in learning the Hebrew language is when you learn one, you've learned them all. In other words, if you are familiar with the word medaber or ledaber, to speak or speaking, then if you throw another 3-letter root into that music, if you will, like tell. So you have medaber, speak, mesaper, tell. Okay, mevashel, cook, mekapel, fold. So you hear it, and that's why it's so easy to rhyme with Hebrew, by the way, because there's these common patterns here. So we'll talk a little bit about the number 3. I want to take you to help you navigate in the number 3 verb. We'll look at some examples at this website that I think is really fantastic called pe'alim.com. Pe'alim is the Hebrew word for verbs, and it's a very robust, useful website that I encourage all my students to frequent often. And then I found this week 3 online Hebrew learning resources that I'm pretty sure that you're going to want, and I'll show you a little bit of what they look like. And if you email me, I'll be happy to send you those links, because it's very hard for me to embed these links in this actively in this as a PDF. So let's go back to talking about what are the Psalms of Ascent. So if you remember, we said there are 15 of them. They go from Psalm 120 through Psalm 134, and they were used in conjunction with the festivals. They were said when people were going up to Jerusalem. That's why they're called Psalms of Ascent. They're called Shirei HaMa'alot, with an I in there, Shirei HaMa'alot. And so in connection with when they went up to the festival, Pesach or Passover, Sukkot, Shavuot. So really, I did the wrong order. It's Pesach, Shavuot, which is the next holiday we're marking in the Jewish calendar. If you're watching this around this time, we're making this recording in early May of 2023. And then, of course, Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. They are very joyful, hopeful in terms of their content. They express a lot of pilgrim anticipation, we could say, for the coming up the festival, for connecting with Hashem and together with the community. So you can see down here, thanksgiving, praise, right over here, let me do it here. Thanksgiving, praise, trust in Hashem's protection, unity amongst God's people. The next psalm that we'll study we're kind of going in reverse order, 133. A lot of you know the song, Hene Matov Manaim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. How beautiful and good it is when brethren dwell together in unity. We talked about the shortness of them. Each has a unique focus, but they all have a common structure, literary style to them. And some of the best known ones, of course, you're familiar with Psalm 121. Esa Einai El Harim. I'm going to lift up my eyes to the hills. Samachti She'omrim Li. I was glad when they said to me. And then I just quoted a moment ago, Hene Matov Manaim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. So the psalm that we're focusing on, I said, of course, is Psalm 134. In Hebrew, we use letters to represent the numbers. So this is called classically Kuf Lamed Dalet. Dalet is the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, so that's pretty obvious. Lamed is represents the number 30, and Kuf represents the number 100. So we have 134 here. And here's the text. We said it's Shir HaMa'alot. Now I'll put the whole text on the screen. Excuse me. There we go. And let's listen to the chanting of it by Rabbi Dan Be'eri. And again, if you're interested in a link to, he doesn't do all of the Psalms, but he definitely does most of them. So if you are interested in having the link to that in archive.net, I'm happy to send it to you. All right, so here we go.
Shir HaMa'alot, Hineh ברכו את אדוני כל עבדי אדוני, העומדים בבית אדוני בלילות. שאו ידיכם הקודש, וברכו את אדוני. יברכך אדוני מציון, עושה שמיים וארץ.
Okay, so let's dive in and do some analytical work on this. William, I don't know if you have the screen that we were using like last time. If not, that's okay. We could just kind of go through it as it is. But if so, you can put that curtain up, as it were. You familiar with what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. I remember now. Give me a second. Let me find it real fast.
Okay, now that we've heard it, let's walk through this really quickly, superficially, and ask ourselves, what does it mean? So looking here at the text, Shir HaMa'alot, a shir is a song, could also be something poetic. HaMa'alot, ma'alot in modern Hebrew means like degrees, like we talk about temperatura, the temperature. Ma ha-temperatura hayom, what's the temperature today? Shishim ma'alot, 60 degrees. Okay, that would be very hot in centigrade. Because Israel uses centigrade, of course. All right, but here we're talking about ascents or degrees of that kind of rising up. All right, so the verse opens, or the psalm opens with the word Hine. Some of you will remember Isaiah's famous statement, Hineni, here I am, behold, here I am. So Hine is an attention-getting word, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But let's just walk through the basic meaning of it. Hine, behold, Baruchu et Hashem. So bless. All of you bless Hashem. Kol avdei Hashem, all of the servants of Hashem. Ha'omdim beveit Hashem baleilot, the ones who are standing in the house of Hashem in the nights. Su'u yadechem kodesh, lift up your hands, holy, or in this case we would translate it in holiness. Uvachu et Hashem, and bless Hashem. So we see this is repeated right here, or this is repeated here. Yevarechecha Hashem, in other words, Hashem will bless you, and this is given to you in the singular, interestingly enough. Yevarechecha Hashem mitzion, from Zion, from his holy mount in Jerusalem. Ose shamayim va'aretz. So Ose shamayim va'aretz is the one who, we would translate it, maker, heavens, and earth, maker of the heavens and the earth. All right, let's go and take a look at our graph that we created to walk through each of these words and give some deeper understanding of them. So here we go. Once again, we set up here, shir means song, and it's a singular noun, followed by hama'alot, the ascents or degrees. That's a feminine plural, so we have ma'ala and ma'alot. Actually, there's a very beautiful town, and I want to speak to everyone here who's capable of making aliyah, of immigrating to Israel. One of the most beautiful towns in all of Israel is called Mollot. Actually, there's two places. There's a kibbutz Mollot. It's probably I think it's the northernmost kibbutz in Israel, just above the town of Metula, which is the northernmost town of Israel. And then there's another city over to the west in the Western Galilee, was there recently, called Ma'alot. And a lot of Anglos that live there. And in the nearby town called Kfar Vahadim, which is like the village of the roses, very beautiful place. We need a lot more Jewish immigration to Israel in the Western Galilee and the Upper Galilee. So if you've thought about moving to Israel and you're qualified to make Aliyah, then I would encourage you strongly to think about going there, because the Jewish population of the Western Galilee, if you can believe it, is only 30%. So I'm sorry for that diversion, but just seeing that the name Ma'alot reminded me of that fact, which I picked up a couple of weeks ago when I was there. Hine, we talked about that's behold, look here, and it's an interjection. It's like, hey, let me get your attention. Now, sometimes in modern Hebrew, we use this word as a synonym for the word po, which means here, or kan, which means here. So technically in Hebrew, in modern Hebrew usage, we have three different forms of here. So I could say to somebody, somebody could ask me a question, Eifo ha-telephone sheli, where's my phone? And somebody could say, oh, hine, like, behold, look over here, it's here. Okay, so that's a modern application of this biblical word. Going on, we have Baruch, bless, and this is an imperative verb. It's masculine plural. It's being spoken to all the people. All of you do this. Bless Hashem, and it's what we call a class 3 verb. We're going to talk more about that. It's what's known as PL. That's the pattern. Et Hashem. Now, we've spoken briefly before about this word et. The word et is it's non-translatable, but it's really just a marker of something that's known as a direct object. So Hebrew is flexible in how it can do word order. English is pretty strict. We have subject, verb, object. I ate the cake. So in Hebrew, if I use English words, I'll say, I ate et the cake. So et comes before the definite object. So the object of my eating in this case. Also, it comes in front of a proper noun, like somebody's name, or the specific name of a place, like Yerushalayim. Ani ro'eh et Yerushalayim. I see Jerusalem. Ani ohev et Tiberia. I love Tiberias. All right. Ohev et Tiberia. Also, what are known as object or objective pronouns, like me as opposed to I, and us as opposed to we, and them as opposed to they. The second ones are subject pronouns. Those all derive from this word et, and you can find all of those at pe'alim.com. If you look under the prepositions, you'll find them all there. All right. So we've saying so far, Hine Baruch et Hashem, who should do this blessing? Kol, all. Now the word all in Hebrew can have different functions. Sometimes it can be used like a pronoun. Sometimes it can be used like what's called a determiner. Sometimes it can be used as an adverb. And I say here to see this note on the next slide, which I'll go to here really quickly, and then we'll come back to where we were. So I said it's those three categories there. Here's what it means if it's a pronoun. I'm just going to skim through this because if you want the notes, you can just ask me for the notes. I'll email them to you in a PDF. Here's what it is as a determiner. There's some overlap between these, okay? And then as an adverb, here's how it's used, all right? So you can see the differences there. All right, I want to keep moving along here though. All right, we're back to here. So Hine Baruch et Hashem kol hu avdei Hashem. So an eved is the word for a worker,
servant,
an employee, a servant. It can be used for slave. Okay, so sometimes people get a little squirrely with the word eved, thinking it only means slave. It doesn't. It can be used in a variety of different ways. Because remember, we've said before, Hebrew is very context-driven because its vocabulary is more limited than, say, English. I've heard people say that English may have up to 500,000 words. I don't know. That's a lot. I have seen the big Oxford Dictionary that you could probably use either as a weapon or a doorstop. But Hebrew has about maybe pushing the outer limits 40,000 words, which means that many words have more than one meaning depending on the context of it. All right. So my mind wants to go down a rabbit hole of examples, but I can't do that for the sake of time. But it's definitely that way, and that was one of the features that I had to work through and learn through because I didn't start learning Hebrew till I was 24, and that was about 5 years ago. It turned my hair white, as you can tell. No, I'm joking. But it's taken many years to pick up on the subtleties and the nuances of the language at a context level. So if you're working on learning Hebrew, I'm saying that to you to be patient with your pacing. Be patient with your pacing because it takes time to get it, and that's okay. You have time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you a website today that I'll mention in the link that I think will help you a lot if you're trying to accelerate your vocabulary more and hear more simple things that you can retain. So, Kol Avdei Hashem, all the servants of Hashem. This is now you say here, you know that Eved is one servant. So what would be more than one? Avadim.
Right.
We say at Pesach, We said it was recited the Haggadah. Avadim hayinu, Laparo b'Mitzrayim, Avadim hayinu. We were servants of Paro in Mitzrayim. So what's this? What's the business here? Where's the mem? The mem went out to lunch? What happened here? So this is something called the construct state. It's noun plus noun. And when the first noun is a masculine plural, in other words, it ends with im, then yeah, the mem goes out to lunch. That's exactly what happens. The mem takes off. And instead of avadim, we have avdei Hashem. So if we were talking about library books or school books, we're talking about sifrei beit hasefer. So the mem goes away. There's more about the construct state that you can read up on, but we have it in English also when we talk about schoolhouse. Okay, so the word house is modified by school, so it's functioning like an adjective even though it's a noun, and that's what it means here. Construct state means noun plus noun, as opposed to old house, new house, ugly house, expensive house. So when you say like schoolhouse, then that is the English equivalent of construct state. Right? Going further, what are these servants of Hashem doing? It says here, ha'omdim, there's the one standing. So if we just take away the hey here, we have omdim, standing, from the root ayin mem dalet. This is a class 1 verb known as pa'al, or kal, sometimes it's called, which means simple. And that category of class 1 happens to contain a lot of the very simple verbs that we're all familiar with: eat, drink, sit, stand, walk, say. There's quite a large number of them in there. The fact that it's called simple, though, could be a little bit misleading, because really what each of these classes is a pattern. It's a type of action and a pattern of expression, or how it's stated. All right. So we'll see more of that as we go into looking at 3 today. Now, these ones who are standing, where are they standing? We come down to the next one, Baveit Hashem. Now, notice here, you say, well, I thought it was bait. I thought the bait was the word for, or bais if you use Ashkenazi pronunciation. And so, again, same thing. Baveit Hashem, this is also construct state. We have noun plus noun in the house of Hashem. So we could either say, Babait shel Hashem. So if you use the more, so I call it the amplified or extended way of saying it, it would be Hem Omdim, Babait shel Hashem, or Ha Omdim, the ones who are standing, Baveit Hashem, in the house of Hashem. You say, well, what happened? Wait a minute. I thought it was, isn't it Beit Hashem? Yes, but we have a Beit coming here in front of it, letter Beit coming in front of it, that causes the next, the dot that would normally be in here to go out to lunch. I guess it meets up with the mem and they have a nice time. I don't know sure what they're doing exactly. Right. Okay, but the pronunciation here is Beveit Hashem. Again, looking here, what is it? We have noun plus, in this case, a proper noun, the name of Hashem. And once again, I have deliberately just substitute the hey with a little chupchik, that's not a yud there, to represent the name of Hashem, just in case somebody prints off this as a PDF and somehow it gets lost or whatever. I don't want the divine name to be on a piece of paper that could be abused or misused and so on. And finally, what time are these ones standing in the house of Hashem? The last word here in this first verse is Ba'leilot, in the nights. This is a prepositional phrase, starting with the word in the nights. And this is an irregular noun. Because, for example, going back to the Haggadah of Pesach, Ma nishtana b'layla ha-zeh. We don't say ha-layla hazot, even though Lila sounds exactly and looks like a feminine noun. It ends with a hey. Right. Most feminine nouns in Hebrew either end with a taf or they end with a hey. Not all. But in this case, we have a few that fall into an irregular category. They tend to be high frequency ones. You
mean the plural form of them, right?
Yes, in the plural form. Thank you for that. In the plural form, but also in its singular form. It looks, if you think of it, Lamed, Yud, Lamed, Hey. Okay, if you take another word, Kita, all right? That's a feminine. Kita for classroom, right? And there are many others that end with hey. Isha, woman, right? What is a woman? Okay, no, don't go there.
Torah.
All right, right. Torah is another one. There are many, many.
Yeah.
So we talk about Torah, Torot. All right. Kita, Kitot. Okay. And we already went through this one, by the way. So let's move on to the next verse here, 134, verse 2. So the verse goes on to say, to use an imperative now. It's giving us a command form. Su'u, su'u. Now, this is not an invitation to be litigious, even though we live in a very litigious country. Su'u comes from the word, the root nun, sin, aleph, nasa. They say, well, doesn't that mean travel? No, that's nun, samech, ayin. Okay, so it sounds the same, not exactly the same, but nasa. Okay, this is nasa. The nun is a weak letter when it's at the front of a word, and it goes out. I guess the nun and the mem and the dagesh and the beit, they must all get together and have a party or something. But anyway, su means lift up, carry, bear. It's a masculine plural present command form. Do this. You might be interested to know that in modern Hebrew, while the command form of a verb is used, most often Israelis in modern Hebrew will use a future form. Instead of lech sham, go there, they'll say, nu telech sham, you will go there. It's a little softer. So, which is interesting because Israelis are not always known for their softness, right? In terms of their demeanor, it can be a little brusque at times. Many years ago, when I worked in a kibbutz in the north of Israel, I'd be working in a factory. The guy I'm working with is old-time kibbutznik, and he's yelling at me because I'm not doing something right, and I'm feeling, just lower than the dust under my shoes. And then after work, he says, "You coming to me for tea today at 4:00, okay?" It's like, where do I put this? You just yelled at me, and now you want me to come to your house for tea? Because that's kacha. All right, so this is su is a class 1 verb. It's pa'al, but it's a subcategory called a lamed aleph. It's actually in 2 categories, a pei nun and a lamed aleph. You say, well, what is a lamed aleph? I don't see a lamed here anywhere. Well, let me try and explain this, and then in one of our future sessions, we're going to illustrate this a little bit more. So it's something that one has to learn by hearing it a few times. I found in teaching a number of different students through the years. First you hear it, then you see it, and we talk about it a little bit more, and then it finally kind of anchors its way in. Let's take the English word verb, okay? Make the E really, really tiny. So we're left with 3 consonants, right? A V and an R and a B. And then over the V, put a number 1, and over the R, put a 2, and over the B, put a 3, okay? So V represents what number?
1.
And R represents?
3. No, 1, 2, 3, 4. You didn't assign 1 to E, did you?
No, I didn't
okay,
assign 1 to E.
So it would be 2.
Make the E really, all right,
Okay.
Very good. Yeah, I just want to see if you're listening or if you're sitting over there listening to country music or something. All right, so V is 1, R is 2, and B is?
3.
3, very good. Now, that's if we used English consonants. Let's put in Hebrew consonants. What are the Hebrew consonants for the word for verb? Pei, ayin, and lamed, okay? So pei represents the first position in the verb. Ayin represents the second position in the verb. Lamed represents the third letter in the verb. All right. So if I say that a certain word, a verb, is a lamed aleph, then when I say lamed, I'm meaning the third letter of the word is an aleph. If I say, William, that a verb is a lamed hey, what does that mean? It means that the third letter, because lamed represents 3, is a hey.
Okay.
If I say that a word is that a verb is a pei nun, pei is the first letter in the word pa'al, which means verb. So pei is 1. Obviously, then I say it's a pei nun. That means nun is the first letter. And if I say that a verb, and there are these categories, is an ayin or an ayin yud, it means that the middle letter, the second letter in the three-letter root,
Yud.
is either an ayin or a yud.
Got it.
So that what I just gave you right there is the key to understanding the subcategories of what are called weak verbs. Strong verbs don't have that designation. They're just known as strong verbs. But there are weak verbs that have certain letters that have a certain weakness, or they change depending on what time frame we're in, past, present, or future. This is certain things about accent. We're not going to go into we won't go that deep into it. That information is available if you want it. And today we all have a brand new professor called ChatGPT. I've played around with that a little bit with Hebrew grammar. He's not always accurate, but he's learning. That's the scary part.
That's funny.
All right. So we said, Sue, lift up, carry. What are we going to lift up? Here goes in the next word, yedechem, your hands. Now, this could be, if we amplify the term, it would be hayadayim shelachem, hayadayim shelachem, the hands of you, plural. But here, Hebrew likes to reduce things down. So it will combine nouns with something that are known as pronominal suffixes. It has nothing to do with suffering. But pronominal suffix is an ending that gets tacked onto the noun that shows to whom it belongs or about whom it's speaking. So here it's saying, yedechem, your hands. Interestingly enough, the word yad or yadayim in Hebrew is a feminine noun, even though it sounds masculine. You say, well, why is that? I don't know. It's interesting because body parts, that especially ones that have duality, like einayim, oznayim, spatayim, nochrayim, yadayim, reglayim, pointing to my legs, they're all feminine. Okay. So the word yad looks feminine. The word yad is feminine, but it looks masculine. On to Se'u yedechem kodesh, lift up your hands holy or in holiness. The word holy here is an adjective, but it's really kind of being used as a noun, and it's written without a vav. You notice you don't see, this is known as a cholem chaser. It's a little dot right up. It's hard to see, but it's right there above the kuf. Sometimes you see it with the vav and the dot over it, and sometimes you don't. We had a parsha, there's a parsha called Kedoshim, and in that passage it says, Hashem says to Bnei Yisrael, to the people of Israel, Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani. And he says, you will be holy because I am holy. In English, it seems like it's equivalent. You know, you're going to be holy because I'm holy. But in Hebrew, we get an insight because the first use of the term Kedoshim is written without the vav in the diminished form, that what's called the defective form. Doesn't mean that there's something wrong with it or the people. It means it's just kind of reductionism. And then when it says ki kadosh ani, because I am holy, it's written in the full sense of the word. So what we gain from that is Hashem says you can achieve a level of holiness. Now, when I was back in the Christian ministry many years ago, I was told that a holy God cannot connect with unholy humanity and that every one of us is unholy. But we see this interesting imperative in the Torah that tells the people of Israel, be holy, you know. Kadoshim to you will be holy, ki kadosh aneh. Because now, is Hashem just giving theory? Theoretically, you would be holy, but you're not. No, there are degrees of holiness. And we see that even in the structure of the courtyard of the temple. There was the court of the Gentiles, there was the holy place, there was a most holy place. So we see that the concept of holiness has also not just the Shirei Mollot with the Psalms, there are Ma'alot, degrees of holiness that the Torah tells us about. So just a little diversion there, but I think it's important to kind of chiropractically correct a concept that many of us had as a myth perception about our relationship and our approachability to Hashem. Okay, so Su Yedechem Kodesh, Uvarchu, and you will all bless Hashem. We're back to a PL, a class 3. Again, it's just the music of the verb. Uvarchu, it's a command, it's in the present form. Et Hashem, the last one on the slide here. Again, we said et appears before a proper or a definite noun. What do you mean by definite? A noun that has the word the in front of it. I see the book. In Hebrew, it would be I see it, the book. Okay, it's untranslatable, but it's a marker for that feature of language. Okay, coming to the third final verse here, we have Yevarechacha. So this is an interesting one because it's future. The yud here is a sign of the future in this particular construction. It's also a class 3. Yevarechacha, he will bless you. Future verb with a pronominal suffix. We just mentioned, what's a pronominal suffix? It's a suffix on the end of a word. It could be a noun or a verb in this case, that tells who's the object or what's the object, or is there belongingness to you? Who are we talking about? And this is talking about you. Now, this can be so confusing to students sometimes because in the English, we have one word for you. It could be, I'm talking to you, Tom. I'm talking to you, Sally. I'm talking to you, Tom and Sally. I'm talking to you, Sally and Mary. There are 4 different words for you. And then if I'm talking about them, then it's in the object form. There's also 4 forms, okay? There's otcha, otach, etchem, etchen. So again, if you go to palim.com and you look under the prepositions, you'll find all that there. So, but that takes people some getting used to. 8 different forms of the word you. It's even more complex than that because all of the prepositions have these type of endings on them. And listen, again, you learn one, you learn them all. But in the beginning, it can look a little bit overwhelming, not only because our eyes aren't used to the what's called the orthography, the manner of how it's written, but also just the concept itself. It's alien to us a little bit. So, Yevarechecha, he will bless you, Hashem. From where? Mitzion, from Zion, from his holy place in Jerusalem. This is a prepositional phrase, preposition plus a proper noun. And then it gives us then a description of who Hashem is, or more specifically, what he's done. Ose, and here it's being used as a noun, maker of Shamayim, and the last one, Va'aretz, maker of heaven. So this word ose means, usually it's a verb, okay? Ma'ata ose, I could say in modern Hebrew, what are you doing? Or I'd say to a woman, ma'at osa, okay, ma'ata ose, what are you doing? But it's also can be used as a subject noun, making. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the concept of the Hebrew verb. Why do I keep hammering away on this in these 5 different lessons that we've done so far? Because understanding the nature of the Hebrew verb is the key to unlocking the rest of the language. It all derives from the root of those 3 letters that's called a shoresh. So we learn a verb in its shoresh form. For example, if I go back to here, this is the shoresh form, the root form of the word for doing something or making something. This is not making something out of nothing. This is usually making something out of something. We say in Hebrew, yesh me'ayin, something from, there is something from nothing, or yesh me'yesh, something from something. So this is making something from something. And this category, this class 1 category, has a specific sort of pattern to it. So for example, you heard I said, say, usually there's a vav right here. This is written in the Psalm in the reductionist version I mentioned earlier. But normally you would see a vav right here, say. And by the way, what's the last letter here, William? You notice?
Hey. Yep.
So this, what would in those 3 categories we talked about earlier, pei, ayin, lamed, which is the word for verb,
right?
And we use that to categorize. So this would be a lamed hey. This would be a class 1, Baal, lamed hey. Why do we even bother to categorize that? Because the music of it changes a bit when we throw it into the past. Even in the present, we say ose, osa, osim, osot. And in the plural, the hay goes away. We say osim, the hay is gone. Osot, the hay is gone. They say, well, probably the best thing to do would be to look at Pe'alim. And let's see if I think I have it up over here on this screen. Yeah, let's just slide this over here. Is that coming up all right through it on your screen?
Yes, sir. Yep, perfect. Just like that.
All right. So I absolutely love this website. I'm so grateful that it's free. I think that, well, there is an app version which you can download to your phone. It's worth whatever. I don't think it's expensive, but it's definitely worth having. So if we take this word, and I have to use my glasses here, but I went to the eye doctor today and I'm like dilated. So the light from three screens is
Well,
having a
you're
lot
in
of
good
fun.
company, my little non-bloodshot eye man.
That's right. Okay. So I'm putting in here the ayin, the sin, or it could also be shin, and the hey. Okay, so I put it in here for the search engine. I say go. It's going to give me the results for this shorish, this root. And then I can come down here and I can click on all the different forms. So I'm interested in the first one called pa'al. It's a verb, means to do, to make, to create. Here's the infinitive form, the to do something, la'asot. And here's the full conjugation. So I come down here and I bring it all up. And what do I see here? Let me take the glasses off now. So it gives it to me in the present, the past, the future, also the imperative, which means a command form, and then the infinitive we talked about, lasso, to do something. There's no gender or number or person involved with that, by the way. So when we look at the present tense, we say ose, I, you, e, or it. Osa, I, you, she, or it. And plural, osim, osod. I mentioned to you that the hey goes away. Notice this. Where's the hey here?
Yeah.
It's gone. Where's the hey here? It's gone. And that's characteristic of a lamed hey verb. Well, let's take another. The same pattern will be the word for drink, shote. The hey goes away in the plural. Also, another characteristic is that, notice here, in the past, or right here, let's take this one. Asiti. It's not asati. If it were a strong verb like write, katav, it would be katavti. But because this is a lamed hey verb, the hey goes away, the yud comes in, and the music changes from a'a'i to a'i'i. And again, if you learn one, you learn them all. So if you master this verb ose, and then in the past asa, and the future ya'ase, then you learn another one that's a lamed hey verb, and it'll basically follow the same patterns, which is one of the things that makes Hebrew easy, but in the beginning it can be a bit challenging. So I very much appreciate the power and the use of this particular website. Another thing that's interesting about it is down at the bottom, each time you go through a conjugation here, and that's what we call it when you look at a verb in all of its different forms, it's called conjugation. So when we come down here, we see other words that are derived from that Hebrew word. So if you're a little bit more of an advanced student and you're looking to enrich your vocabulary, then one of the easiest ways to do that, well, let's talk about, I'm going to take myself back to old Dorothy Furlong's educational psychology class when I was back in Bible college umpteen years ago. And she taught us the 7 laws of teaching. Now, I've forgotten 2 through 7, but I've never forgotten number 1. And they say she was a fiery person, she's back in this very, very Pentecostal kind of teacher that I had.
That's funny.
And she'd stand up there and she'd thunder and she'd say, the first law of teaching is to take the student from the known to the unknown. Always link the unknown to the known. Okay. Okay. I'll be sure to do that.
Oh,
At least I
matey.
never forgot that. So when we apply that to language acquisition, if you are familiar with the simple fact that this is the shorish, okay, the root, and this is the basic meaning of it, then when we come down to the bottom here, we see other words in other forms that are derived. For example, the word ma'aseh, a deed, an action, an event, an incident, or the adjective ma'asi, something that's practical, or asui, something that's done, something that's made. Hasefer asui b'Yisrael, the book is done or was done in Israel. So all of this that you see down here, even the word ta'asiyah for industry, you can see, that's the beautiful thing about Hebrew, you can see the shorish in here, you can see the root right inside of there. Okay. So that's one of the rich features about this website, pe'alim.com, that you can use as you're learning a specific verb. Then you can come down here and say, okay, what other words are related to this? So that's I wanted to focus on that for a minute. And let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so remember before we've talked about the building. So the Hebrew verbs are called binyanim, which means buildings. And we take a 7-story building and we say there are 7 types of action. There's simple action. Actually, it's more like 4 types of action, but there's an active and a passive form. But each one has its own music, so that's why we say 7. So there's simple active, simple passive. You say, well, what's passive? Sits around and does nothing? Is that a couch potato verb? No. It means, for example, William wrote the book. The book was written by William. The first one is simple active. William wrote the book. The second one is passive. The book didn't do anything, right? The book was written by William. That's how we do it in English. We use a to be form plus the third form of an irregular verb in this case. But that's just like more information than you're really interested in. I like the mechanics of language, but not everybody does. In fact, 95 to 96% of people just want to know, how do I get a falafel and where's the bathroom? That's all I want to know. The third and fourth, notice the colors here are coordinated, not to be pretty, but because they are related. So this intensive has an active and a passive to it. For example, if I say, I speak Hebrew, ani medaber Ivrit, okay, I speak Hebrew. If I want to use the passive form, I say Ivrit meduberet po. Hebrew is spoken here. So there's medaber, ani medaber, and Ivrit meduberet. It's feminine, so that's why I'm using the extra t sound coming out in there. So, and then the same thing is true with this category called causative, making something to happen. It's technically called hifil in Hebrew. And causative means, for example, we did this before, if I dress the doll, or I dress the baby, or I dress the mannequin, okay, I'm causing clothing to be on this object. I'm not dressing myself. That would be category number 7. Reflexive, the action goes out and comes back on myself. Or there's some kind of mutuality in the action. For example, we have the word kotev or katav that has to do with writing. Well, up here in this category, we have lehit katev, which means to have correspondence. So if I say ani mit katev im William, I am corresponding with William, that means the action is going back and forth between us. So once again, I'm talking about types of action. That's what this binyanim is representing. And within all of these, we have 2 major categories of verbs. We have strong verbs and we have weak verbs. Weak verbs are characterized by certain letters that, depending on the time frame or sometimes the gender, usually second person feminine singular, which is like she or at, a you plural, you singular feminine. Sometimes there's a little curious phenomenon that happens with those. Again, you learn one, you learn them all. A good example that I'm thinking of right now that'd be down here, number 1 would be the word for read, koreh. It ends with an aleph. It's a lamed aleph verb, koreh. And feminine, I talk about, ani koreh, Miriam koret, Miriam reads, okay? Anachnu korim, we read together. Hen, they talk about the ladies over here, hen korot, all right? So the lamed aleph verb, what's lamed? 3. What's aleph? It's the 3rd letter of the root. Kuf resh aleph. Okay, so it has this little phenomenon that it adds a taf to it. Again, you go back to pe'alim.com, throw the root in there, and you can see it. Just observe it. All right, so we'll be coming back to this picture a few times. So we mentioned here once again, Hebrew verbs can be classified as strong or weak. Strong verbs have a 3-letter root. Generally, there are some 4-letter. And that root stays intact through all the different conjugations. Now we say, well, what do we mean by conjugation? Well, let's do one. Let's take a look at one. Okay, let's come over here and take it back up to here, and we're going to throw in the little funky to see here today. Okay, let's throw in the word katab, the root katab, which has to do with writing, and let's put it up here. Okay, great. Here are the results for it. We have the infinitive form, lichtov, to write. All right. I want to look, it's telling me this is the PAL category. There are some, more than one category on this, by the way. But we're just going to look at the PAL category, number one category. And we notice if you take a look through all of the different forms in the present, in the past, and the future, you'll notice that you see the kaf, taf, bet through all of them. In other words, nothing's disappearing. It's there all the way through. That's known as a strong verb. The word shalom would be one of those. If the different variations of that's the noun form, but the different, like leshalem, to pay, you'll find lehishtalem, to be complete. You'll find that three-letter word appearing in all the different verb categories that one might exist in. By the way, going back to, let me come back over here.
So lishtalem would be, so that's not dropping an M and then adding one to make it plural?
No.
Because it's a verb, not a noun.
Right.
Okay, got it. That's right.
Okay.
Okay.
And by the way, I want to say that not all roots exist in all 7 categories. That's rather rare, as a matter of fact, very rare. You'll find some roots that only exist in 1 or 2. Okay. And you'll find some that only exist in a passive form. You'll find some that only exist in number 1 and number 3 and maybe number 7. So we recognize them by their pattern. I like to call it, and my friends at Ulpan Or, the Hebrew online program, and also they have classes in Israel, they call it the music of the word. And learning to recognize the music of the verb is what it gives your ears the training to know, this is a this is a this. I think I've mentioned it before. I have an amazing student. I've been working with him since he's 12. He just turned 17. His Hebrew is absolutely gorgeous. I could drop him anywhere in Israel and he could be very functional. A lot of that, yes, I believe I'm a good teacher, especially one-on-one. We made a lot of progress, but I can say one new word to him and he'll tell me which floor in the building it is, as it were. And then his mind will automatically go to all the different forms of that verb.
Nice.
That you would see. So I could teach him one new word and all of a sudden it becomes 19 new words for him. Huh. He's got it in past, present, future, command form, et cetera, et cetera.
Is there an easy way to remember the order of these?
Well.
Or is it even necessary to remember the order? Just more important just to know what they are.
Well, if you want to make an acronym from the bottom up, we're going to have 1, 3, 5, and 7, right?
Okay.
Because we know that on 1 through 6, the numbers 2, 4, and 6, the even number ones, they're all passive, right? And numbers 1, 3, and 5, they're all active, right? Okay. So if we take S, I, C, R, we could come up with sicker. Sicker.
That's funny. That's
all right.
funny.
So that's one way to do it. I don't think that people have to master the language about language. I think it's a terrible distractor, unnecessary. If you just know that there's this thing called simple action, it exists in active and passive form. There's some intensive action that's also got a passive equivalent. For example, we talk about, here we talked about before, I broke the glass. Up here, I shattered the glass. But the problem is not every verb that goes from a simple form to an intensive form has that continuing intensity. You can definitely tell the difference between breaking something and shattering something, right? Okay. But for example, if we take the root dalet bet resh, it has to do with speaking, okay?
Right.
So down here it'd be dover. A dover is a speaker, Ani dover ivrit. I am a speaker of Hebrew. Ani dover Anglit, ani dover Aravit, ani dover Sfaradit. Okay, so I can get by in more or less in 4 languages. But up here, when I bump it into PL, medaber, it simply means speak. So down here it's speaker, and up here it's speak. Okay, so it's just the music shifts. Okay, right. In some cases you will see a correlation between one level of action and an intensification of that action, but more or less really not. So whoever came up with these labels many years ago did us a disservice. Okay. So the Hebrew names of them are really just a play on the word verb,
on the way the vowels are pronounced.
Yeah, and
Right.
so it's giving you what it is in the. And by the way, this pronunciation here, this is the past form. This is the form that would tell you, and you'd find it in the dictionary. It answers the question, what did he do yesterday?
Okay.
So this or nif'al or pl, for example, diber, he
Right.
spoke, diber, right? Or lehit katev, or hit katev, he corresponded. So this form that you see actually represents what it would look like, what the music would be if you're looking in the dictionary. Okay?
What it sounds like whenever you
What it
pronounce the
sounds
word.
like. Exactly right.
Got
Thank
it.
you for your insight.
Sure.
So we have strong verbs and we have weak verbs. So weak verbs can have a hey at the end. There could be a yud in the middle. There could be a nun in the beginning. So it just depends. These are different categories. And then you learn one, you learn them all.
Can you
Those
go
are
back a
called-
screen? Because I'm trying to process this for my brain because you know me, I can't learn things normal. I've got this. I guess I'm not.
I know you're from Texas.
I'm from
it
Texas.
It takes a day or two longer.
So spinning back around to the question that I posed earlier, is there a way to remember these in order, or do we even need to? And based on what you just showed me, was the name of these, like Hifil, that's the
Yes.
EE, Pual is UA, PL is EE, Nifal is EA, right? So really, I don't need to memorize, like you said, in order. I just need to know if I see that word and I know what the vowels are, then that would be a simple passive, and that's how I would understand it, right?
Right. So you want to ask
Okay.
yourself, what's the music of this word?
Right.
Okay. And
Nice.
to learn the notes in context. Okay. So we're not just learning them on the staff, as it were, using in a musical analogy.
That's great.
Da 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 da. Well, in isolation, you want to learn them in context, and the way you learn them in context is you, like, for example, look at a whole word. So that's on that. Okay.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. That's great.
I hope it helps. I appreciate your
absolutely.
questions. They help me clarify. So if we just want to summarize here, strong verbs have a stable root, in other words, 3 letters, sometimes 4, that remain consistent across all the different forms or conjugations of it. Okay, so we saw that in palim.com, in which I closed, unfortunately. All right, and the weak verbs have a root that can be modified or weakened in certain verb forms. Okay, so like I showed you, that the hey goes away when it's present, but it's plural. It goes away in the past, except for the word, like he made or he did. That you see the dictionary form, asa. Okay. I'm not going to go deep dive on this particular one. I'll leave the slide up, but if people want to request the notes and then kind of go over this on their own. Let me come back to Palim here for a second, because I think that's the best way, is to show it. You can read through that while I'm pulling this up.
Okay. Yeah, very good. It's cool. So in Hebrew, the term simple verb usually refers to those verbs that belong to Pa'al, conjugation pattern. The Pa'al is the most basic and common conjugation pattern in Hebrew, and is often referred to as the active or simple pattern. Cool. And then,
so verbs in the Pa'al conjugation follow a very straightforward, regular kind of approach. This is very interesting. This is not what I wanted to use for this particular one. I wanted to use something else, and it's not there. I wanted something on PL. Okay, I'm not too embarrassed. How do I look in red? You like it?
Better than my eye does.
I know. I'm very sorry. Refuah shlema for your eye.
Thank you.
I remember when I was working on this, I put up here the category title, and I forgot to change all of this, by the way.
Ah, got you. Okay.
By the way, most of this came from ChatGPT. But it gives, if you ask ChatGPT, please explain the Hebrew verb system PL, it'll give you some interesting information. But let's once again go back over to PL here. And so how do I find something that's PL? How would I know that something is PL? Well, you wouldn't necessarily, except if you let's take something that most people know is the word medaber, okay, for speak, ani medaber. So let's put in here, what's the root? Dalet, Beit, Resh. Okay, now I'm going to go. Now, if I look, I'm going to see that here's a noun, davar, which means thing or word. The fifth book of the Torah, or the Chumash, is Sefer Devarim. And here we come to dever, which is a plague. This is what I'm looking for here. Ledaber, to speak. So the lamed in front of here tells me that I'm in the right verb territory. This tells me it's PL. That's category 3, to speak or talk. And I want to look at the full
Okay,
conjugation.
question for you. Go back one screen.
Yes, sir.
This is where I get confused. So this is ledaber, but it's a not a. So how do I associate those two?
Okay, it's e-a-e. Okay, that's in the
bear.
So now in the present, it's really easy. You take out the lamed, you put in a mem.
Okay.
Medaber gives you the present. E-a-e. That is the music of a PL in the present. So let's take a look at it.
So why wouldn't that be called pe'e instead of pa?
I'll tell you why. Because look at the past. The name of the verb, those 7 category names that we have there, the types of action, are all based on what form? They're based on, I said, what did he do yesterday? Notice right here.
Uh-huh.
Look right here. Let me make this bigger for you.
Got it.
Okay. So
E-A.
what does it say here? It says E-A.
Right.
E-L. It's not P-L. It's P-L, like E-Y, like they. P-L. This is D-bear. This is how it is with the vowel points, and here's how it is unvowel pointed. All right. So D-bear. This is the music that defines it as PL. It comes from the third person, that's he, masculine, in the past. The third person masculine past tense is what determines the name of that category that we saw in our list.
Okay.
Okay, so that's where it comes from. So that's and now if we come up here and look at what's interesting, let me see if I can come back to this in a second. Hang on a second. Where is it? Yes, here. Okay, so we come back to the building. If we're talking about the present, then 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 in the present time only have a mem in front.
Interesting.
What? Yes, they all have a mem in front. Now I just lost. It's hidden behind here. I have to find it here. Just a second.
That's all right. Take it out.
Sorry. There we go. I have to find it.
So mandaber would be to speak, like future tense. I thought ledaber would be to speak.
No. Yeah, ledaber is to speak. Look down here.
But medaber would be.
Medaber is present tense for speaking. Ani medaber. So either it's a fact of something that you can do at any time. Ani medaber.
Gotcha.
Portuguesit.
Okay.
I speak Portuguese.
Okay, but it's not past tense though. It's actually present or future tense. Got it.
All right. So here's your present tense. Medaber. This is for I, you, or he, masculine. She or feminine. Like if your wife is speaking, she says Ani medaberet ivrit. I speak Hebrew. So you have medaber, medaberet, medabrim, medaberot. Right.
Okay.
So again, you have 4 different categories here in the present. When you go to in the present, you have 1 connected to 3. In the past, it's 1-on-1. That is to say, if I hear dibarti, I know that this is I spoke. If I hear dibarnu, I know it's we spoke. So these endings here we have diber. Notice right here. Okay. This is diber. Okay, but it's without an ending. Here in the past, we're in number 3 territory. Okay, so what's the music of it? Dibarti. It's not diberti. All right, it's dibarti. But you see the root in here. You see how the root is structured.
Yeah. Diber.
Okay,
right. That makes sense.
So
okay, cool.
Again, if you learn one of these,
so it's so all those PLs and all this other stuff is based on the root, not any other form of it.
That's correct.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so then we see here all those. Also, this is a strong verb. You notice that the dalet and the beit and the resh exist in all the different forms here.
Right.
And one of the ways that we remember the structure of things is the past contains suffixes. things come after, because the past is behind us. So here we see the suffixes are, as it were, behind the root. So if we look here, we see, so it's behind, something attached to the end of the word. When we come to the future is ahead of us. So we see something attached to the beginning, okay, at the front of the verb, all right, because the future is in front of us. So here we have adaber, I will speak, or nidaber, we will speak. Tidaber, you will speak, all right? Tidabri, there's two, there's one in the front, one at the end, okay? Tidabru, you, plural, will speak. And then there's a biblical form over here, tidaberna, which isn't used so much. It's kind of very formal. So again, we're going a little bit deeper than I wanted to go on this, but I think it's helpful just to show that if you learn one of these really well, then you have just mastered all the music of any of the number 3 category PL verbs, as we call them, that follow this musical pattern. And there are dozens and dozens of them. In fact, the PL category is the fastest growing category of new verbs coming into the Hebrew language, because there's an academy that actually creates new language. Okay.
Nice.
So, all right. So let's kind of wrap all this up and drop this down and come back to our, all right. So I found some things that could be helpful to everyone who's watching.
You got your full
For
screen.
example, yeah, let me get the full screen here. Thank you very much. I found an interesting site that has hundreds of Hebrew words adapted and used in modern Hebrew. Oh, this is this is not spelled right. I should say this a little differently. Let's do this. Here, wait, let's do it this way. We'll change it on the fly. This is what happens when you're doing too many things at one time. Now we got it right. Okay, there we go.
Funny.
Fixed in real time. Hundreds of English words adapted and used in modern Hebrew with their Hebrew equivalents. And here's just a little snapshot. For example, if you look at this, cowboy. Cowboy.
That's funny.
Okay? Cowboy.
Yeah.
So you'll hear that, but there actually is an English word for, a Hebrew word for cowboy, and it's boker. You say, whoa, wait a minute. I thought boker was morning. Yeah, but it's actually adapted from the word for cow, bakar.
Bakar, right? How many?
Yeah, so cattle are called bakar, and the boker, the actual, it used to be ro'e bakar, someone who's a shepherd of cows, but it was reduced down to boker. Now, notice, by the way, I didn't say boker, morning. It's boker. The emphasis is on the last syllable, all right? Syllable. You have a word like cult, okay? Cult. There is a Hebrew word for it, pulchan, okay? It's used, but some people say cult. For example, a cult movie or something like that. So there's a bunch of these. Country club, right? All right. Cabina, a cabin, all right? And there's a cabinet. So there's a cadet. There are Hebrew words for all these different things, but there are literally hundreds and hundreds of these. So if you're interested in having the link to this, I'll be more than happy to send it to you. Just request it at my email. Another thing that I found that I think would be interesting for some people is some people need to type in Hebrew, but they don't have a keyboard for it.
Right.
I use a program called Davka Writer, which it's about $160 software program that puts in the dots, etc. But if you don't have access to that, then there's a online at Do It at Hebrew that where you can use this. You can use your own keyboard. If you look here and you see, for example, the letter A corresponds to Aleph and also to Ayin. You press the shift, for example, to get the Ayin. Pressing shift here, see it goes to Ayin. Here we have a Samach. It's not a 0, it's a Samach. But if I press the shift, it goes to a Sin or a Shin. And we have the different, also you can find it in here, the different Sofiot, the final letters in here. So this is a really nice thing to have access to. And if you are,
is that the layout? That's always the layout on the keyboards on the Hebrew?
No, this is interesting because if you look here.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is standard Israeli keyboard layout. This is a phonetic layout.
Oh, see, I like the phonetic layout way better.
Of course, exactly.
Oh, that's
and so
nice.
I use a software program called Davka Writer, as I said, and it has a phonetic keyboard also.
Nice.
This one I find is a little bit easier to use.
Right.
So, for example, here's Here's the letter T. Okay.
Yeah.
But here's if I need a tet, it's right there. Now on my phonetic keyboard, J, which looks sort of like a tet, is how I use for here. But I actually like this one even better. So there is a nice phonetic keyboard here. And if you need, then, for example, to go and put in Nikudot, I'll be glad to give you the link for this one as well. There's something called Nakdan. And Nakdan, you can put Hebrew text in here, all right? And it'll give you the vowel points. It'll fill it in for you. Is it always accurate? No. I mean, I use this a lot with my students, and I have to go through and make sure, that it got the form of the word correctly. But it gives you a lot of different options on how to do that. So if you're at a more advanced level and you need to do that sort of thing, then it's really an easy thing to do. So back to our, there we go. Also, I found a conversational Hebrew site that gives you 17 free lessons, self-paced. I have one of my students, one of my intermediate students, 13-year-old guy, very enthusiastic guy, who's working through those lessons right now, because it's like all the basics that you really need to know, and it gives it to you, presents it to you in a format that I think is pretty easy to absorb, to comprehend. Because really, language learning for me is all about comprehensibility. I like to use the word rich as an acronym. You want to be working with language that is relevant, not obscure. And for a lot of people, biblical Hebrew is interesting, but it's obscure, so it takes a while to get. So you want to deal with language that's rich, relevant, interesting. Letter C stands for comprehensible. Okay, it means something to me. I'm aware of what's being said. And the H really stands for two English words, which is high frequency. So if you're going after Hebrew, then you want to tackle the high frequency words. And we've mentioned in the past, and it's in some of the previous lessons, where you can pick up a list of the most high frequently used terms in the Jewish Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, both for nouns and for verbs. So you can learn them in blocks. It starts with 500 to 5,000 times. So if you didn't get that first time around, you're meeting us for the first time in this lesson, then you're welcome, of course, to ask for that.
Nice.
I want to, I think that's it. Yeah. And so if you'd like a PDF copy of the notes for today's shiur lesson,
you
can email me.
Oh, yeah, very good. gshebrew@gmail.com.
Yep, gshebrew@gmail.com. You're welcome to write me there.
Nice.
You can put notes in the subject line. The one I just mentioned over here, if you want these things, you can put links in the subject line. I'll say those links, those 3 links. And if you are interested in, online, one-on-one or small group learning, thanks to William, I have a small group of 4 or 5 of us. We've been learning together we're in our 3rd year now. We're having a ball on Sunday nights.
That's awesome.
If you're interested in being part of something like that, then that's certainly available to you. So
very good.
I am not a sage on the stage when it comes to teaching. I'm what's known as a guide on the side. I know it's very poetically said.
Nice.
That was the title of an article that I read from the 1990s. Sage on the stage or guide on the side? Well, every teacher should really be a guide on the side. When it comes to language learning, that's what you want, Okay, that's it.
Very good. Okay, my friend, give me your camera back so I can see your happy face.
All right, let's bring you back here. Here we
are.
All right,
that is it right there. Very good. More Gavriel Aryeh Sanders, it's been a pleasure as always. I really appreciate your time and dedication. And thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you same time, same place next week, Hashem willing. And until then, for all you looking forward to tonight, see you at 7 p.m. Central. Gavriel, love you, brother. We'll see you later. Take care, everybody. Shalom. Hello, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com, TaNaChTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
אחד, חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות